In this video, we are going to compare a lineage cartridge, this guy here, the 7mm-08 Remington, to the parent case, the 308 Winchester. We're going to find out which one is better. Hope you enjoy the video. It didn't take long after the 308 Winchester was introduced in 1952 that wildcatters were messing with the 308 case. They came up with this guy here, the 7mm in a 308 case. Remington, as it often does, took the popular Wildcat and introduced it as the 7mm-08 Remington in 1980. And I feel like in the last 10 to 15 years, the 7mm-08 Remington has really taken off. Let's take a quick look at its dimensions. Again, it's really just a 308 neck down to 7mm. The cartridge overall length with the bullet in there, SAMI spec, is 2.80, just like the 308. The case is actually just a tad bit longer. I believe the neck's just a little bit longer than the 308. It's 2.035, while the 308 is supposed to be 2.015, I believe. I'll double check that in a sec. It has a lot of the same great characteristics of the 308 Winchester, that it's extremely efficient and that it's driving these decent sized bullets at pretty well respected velocities. Let's take a look. A popular bullet for the 7mm, I feel like, is a 140 grain bullet, because you can get that going just over 2900, maybe 2945 with certain powders. That's going pretty quick. Now remember, a 6.5 Creedmoor gets 140 grain bullets going around 2750. So it's 150 feet per second faster than a 6.5 Creedmoor. Now another popular bullet you'd want to try is maybe a 150 grain. And people are getting mid 2800 feet per second when you hand load. Again, that's pretty well respected velocities. The last bullet I want to kind of look at is a 168 grain, and you're just a little below 2700 feet per second. So 2650 to 2675 is about the max you're going to get with a 168 grain. I think its sweet spot is really 120 to 150 grain. The 308 Winchester, co-introduced with the military and civilian market in 1952, and well, the 308 was just going to be a more efficient, better version of a 30-06. Now, before you guys flame me in the comments about a better version of a 30-06, let me explain. So the military wanted lighter guns, lighter ammunition, and you know, the military was just using the M1 Garand, which was shooting kind of watered down 30-06. Max velocity from an M1 Garand is like 2700 feet per second on a 150 grain bullet. And so in a 308 Winchester, you can quite easily get 2700 feet per second. And again, it's in a much smaller package, much lighter, much handier for military. It's very effective, and people absolutely love it for hunting as well. Let's take a look at the performance. Now, popular bullets for 308 are really 150 and 168 grain bullets. Now, I would say you could probably get, this is with a 24-inch barrel, so I kind of have my doubts that you can get almost 3000 feet per second, but I know some people can. I would say you can respectfully probably get 2850, probably 29. It's very good performance. You know, it's almost matching 30-06 with a 150 grain. Now, a 168 grain, it's still pretty darn good. Well, Nosler says you can get 28. I would say most people are going to get 27 to 2750. So comparing it to the 7mm-08, shooting the same weight bullets, it does probably have about a 50 to 100 feet per second advantage over the 7mm-08. Let's go ahead and look at the 7mm-08 Remington downrange ballistics with a 140 grain, BC of 0.485. I believe this is the AccuBond, and muzzle velocity of 2900 feet per second. Your energy is 2,615 foot-pounds. Now, in a 8-pound rifle, your recoil is around 14 foot-pounds of energy. So it's a pretty light recoil. Now, I've shot a handful of 7mm-08 Remingtons. They don't recoil a lot, but I would say there's kind of a snappy cartridge. Kind of surprising is what I would describe it as. Anyway, let's go ahead and look downrange at 400 yards. The bullet's going 2,180 feet per second, and your energy is almost 1,500 foot-pounds. Bullet drop, 26.9 inches. So, very respectable. This is a darn good deer cartridge. And honestly, you could have a very good argument to use it for elk as well. Just knowing your limitations with range. But I would say it's totally fine out to 300 yards. The 308 Winchester. Now, I'm not going to use a 140 grain bullet. I'm actually going to use a bullet that has very similar BC. And so we're going to use a 165 grain with a BC of 0.475, a muzzle velocity now 2,800 feet per second, and your energy is about 200 more foot-pounds. But with that more energy, and you need a little bit more recoil. Now let's go ahead and look out to 400 yards. The bullet's not going as fast, but you're going to have about 100 more foot-pounds of energy. Now, is the animal going to tell? No. Very similar in performance. And drop, it's about 3 inches more drop. In my cartridge comparisons, I've always compared bullets with similar BC when it's a different caliber. But what happens when we both use a 150 grain bullet in a 308 and a 7mm-08? This is a 7mm-08. I know there's a bunch of numbers, and so let me try to get you to focus on some important things. Muzzle velocity 2,800 feet per second, 2,612 foot-pounds, 400 yards, 29 inches of drop. Bullets going 2,100 feet per second, and it's 1,477 foot-pounds. 308 with a 150 grain has 2,800 foot-pounds of energy. So again, about almost 200 more foot-pounds. And then check out the drop at 400 yards. It is a little bit less because you're pushing a bullet a little bit quicker. But the velocity out at 400 yards is almost identical. And I mean, they're within 1 foot-pound of each other. As I said, animals are never going to notice between these two. So on the left, the 308 Winchester is just going to have more energy. In typical hunting distances, you're going to have a little bit more energy. Ammo is going to be a bit cheaper. I mean, and then especially with factory ammo, but also with reloading, you're going to have a bigger bullet selection. You're going to be able to shoot 100 grain bullets all the way, if you have a faster twist rate, to 200 plus grain bullets. Okay. And then the 308 is just a more efficient round. In fact, it's really hard to beat the 308 Winchester in efficiency. So as I mentioned earlier, when they're shooting the same weight grain bullet, the 308 is just a little bit faster. Now, the 7mm-08 is plenty efficient, but here's some of the things it beats over the 308. It has less recoil. When you're comparing bullets with the same BC, it's going to have a flatter trajectory because you're going to have to use heavier bullets in the 308 to get the same BC. And just as I just mentioned, when you're comparing bullets in the same weight, the 7mm-08 will have a higher BC. Between the two, my pick, well, you really can't go wrong with either one. They basically do almost the exact same thing. Yeah, the 308 is a little quicker and can shoot heavier bullets. But for me, I kind of want to go with what I think is the cooler cartridge, since their performance is almost identical. So for me, the 7mm-08 would be my pick. I already have a 30 caliber. I don't have a 7mm. This one's just darn good.